Well, the bill we passed off the Senate floor today was our school trust lands bill. And what a lot of Minnesotans don't know is that when we were founded as a state, the federal government passed law that said in every township, two sections, Section 1 and Section 16, would be dedicated as school trust lands. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that these are specific lands set aside to generate revenue for the school children of Minnesota. Essentially, all of this money is put into a trust fund account. The interest that's gained off of the investments with those lands are then redistributed every year on the per pupil formula. Right now, that ends up being right around $30 a year for the school children of Minnesota. The legislation that we passed today essentially creates a legislative and citizen commission to oversee these trust lands and also hires an advisor at MMB to help direct the DNR in their oversight. Why is that necessary? I would argue that this is necessary right now because under the Department of Natural Resources, where the lands are currently managed, there's a conflict of interest. Typically with state-run lands under the department, they look at conservation or preservation. That's not the way we look at school trust lands. These lands are set aside strictly to generate a profit. Now we need to do this in a fashion that will continue to allow the renewable resources to exist. We obviously, if we're looking out for the long-term benefit of the trust fund in these lands, it's beneficial to make sure that they're going to be there long into the future. Well, what does that mean? That means that you maximize the profit generated on these lands while still making sure that they're sustainable. Well, how do we do that? We, in our education and environment committees, had a couple of great presentations this past year from the state of Utah and some of the things that they're doing. Some of the things like real estate investment, or they allow for hunting, and there's many different things that we can do on these lands along with what we're doing already that will help generate profit. Particularly here in Minnesota, a couple of the things that we need to do, which would be accomplished by this legislation, would be to take fire suppression, a cost which is levied against the school trust fund right now, take that out of the school trust fund, make sure that we're not charged for that. Essentially what fire suppression is if there's a wildfire that starts in the school trust lands, the school trust lands gets charged with that. Now that may seem a very reasonable thing. Here's the catch-22. No other state-owned land in the state gets charged. That automatically comes out of the general fund. So essentially what we're saying with this legislation is no longer will we charge the children in Minnesota for fire suppression on their lands, which is very different than any other state-owned land. So that's one of the things that this does. Again, another thing that we're doing here is we're going to swap out, or we are going to, through this new advisor position, hopefully find some ways that we can swap out lands that are currently tied up in areas where we cannot produce a profit at all off of them, either buy them out and give them back to the state, or swap them out for lands that can produce a profit. And that's in a nutshell what the bill does.